Hello, and welcome to Nishmah's Girls in Trouble concert. I'm so glad you are joining us for what I'm sure will be a joyful, moving, and fun concert with Alicia Jo Rabins. Nishmah is a program of the JCC, founded about 15 years ago, which engages and supports Jewish women of all ages through inspirational programming. Nishmah brings together Jewish women and girls from different denominations who may have otherwise not met. One of our programs is Share It, a local chapter of our national not-for-profit organization supporting Jewish women and their families who are facing breast and ovarian cancer. During this COVID period, Nishmah and Share It have continued to keep women engaged through online programming, like our concert tonight. We've continued to have our Women's Torah study, our Facebook Live Jewish Women Get Stuff Done series with our own Larissa Klebe, Yoga for Cancer, and cancer support groups via Zoom. The high participation encourages us to keep moving forward. We aren't letting physical distance get in the way of providing impactful programming to keep us connected. In Hebrew, Nishmah means to listen, and Share It means chain or connect. Tonight, while we are separated by distance, we can still listen and connect to each other from the comforts of our own homes. Thank you for Zooming or for watching via Facebook. And now Larissa will take it from here.
Thank you so much, Debbie, our Nishmah president, for that wonderful introduction. I just want to reiterate Debbie's words of welcome. It is wonderful to have all of you here this evening. I'm going to save most of my thank yous for the end, but I do just want to give a quick and special thank you to the Center for Jewish Learning here in St. Louis for generously sponsoring this event. I believe we have Cindy Levy and Rabbi Tracy Nathan watching this evening. Thank you both for your support and for being here. Just a couple of technical items before I hand things over to Alicia. You'll notice that everyone's cameras and microphones are off, and that ensures the highest quality the highest video and audio quality for Alicia's performance for everyone. So that's why we did that. But we encourage you to participate by using the chat box. Please share your reactions. Please talk to each other. Please ask questions. Alicia will try to answer as many questions as she can. So please feel free to type those in as they come up. And just so everyone knows, this concert is being recorded for later viewing. So I did just want to mention that Nishmah is kicking off our spring appeal, which we call Fill Miriam's Cup. And if you're in the Nishmah universe, you're going to get an email about this tomorrow. So stay tuned. I do want to acknowledge that this is a really difficult and somewhat strange time to be asking for support when there is such great need throughout the community, and we know that people are hurting. At the same time, our work does not and cannot happen without our supporters. You do this work with us, and we need your help now more than ever to continue our mission of inspiring, educating, and empowering Jewish women and girls in St. Louis during the COVID-19 crisis and beyond. So we hope you'll consider making or pledging a gift to Nishmah as part of our spring appeal using the link I will post in the chat box in just a moment. Thank you so much for your support. So now on to the main event. I am so excited to turn things over to Alicia Jo Rabins. Alicia and I have actually worked together for about 5 years. We did a lot of programs, online programs together in my last role at the Jewish Women's Archive, and I'm really excited to get to introduce her to the Nishmah community. Alicia is a writer, musician, ritualist, and Torah teacher. She is the author of 2 books of poetry, Divinity School and Fruit Geode, and has released 3 albums with Girls in Trouble, her indie folk song cycle about women in Torah, with accompanying downloadable study guides. She lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and their 2 children. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Alicia.
Thank you so much, Larissa. Thanks everyone for having me. Can you hear me? All right. Lovely to be here. We're all somewhere and we're somewhere together right now. And I'm just thrilled to be here. I've been talking with Larissa for a few years about how I could partner with Nishmah because the mission is so aligned with what I love to do, which is create art about stories of women in the Torah and their relevance for today. So I'm mostly going to be playing songs from the Girls in Trouble song cycle, which Larissa mentioned, and many of them I'll be doing a little bit of storytelling about the characters beforehand, but this first one I'll pretty much just jump in, except to say that it's about a fairly obscure character named Serach Bat Asher, and according to legend, she's a bit of a female version of Elijah, the prophet, where she never dies. She gets taken up to heaven alive and is sort of always here witnessing what happens. And her story is connected to Passover. So I was thinking a lot about her as we were sort of going through Passover. So this is my song about her, and it's called Tell Me. And just one last thing before I start is that I'm going to be stepping on a piece of electronics on the floor, which you can't see due to the limitations of camera angles. But it's called a loop pedal, and it records what I'm playing and then plays it back. So you'll hear a bunch of violins that I'm kind of layering on top of each other, even though I'm just one person with one violin. Tell me what you're looking for. I'll show you what you have. The pearl inside the oyster of your heart. I've seen the bones rise from the river. I've watched them shining in the dark. To find the one you love. I know him and he's looking for you too. The waters parted, but it wasn't like they said. No iron wall came down to hold them. Has there been a loneliness like mine? Touching all the hidden walls of time. duck down to put my violin away for a moment and grab my guitar. And by the way, if Larissa or anyone else wants to look, as I introduce each song, there are lyrics on the Girls in Trouble website, which is girlsintroublemusic.com. Don't forget the music or you will end up in unsavory corners of the internet. So girlsintroublemusic.com. So if anyone loves multitasking and wants to find that character's page on the site and post it in the chat field in case anyone has trouble hearing the lyrics, I know sometimes that can be a little bit hard. This next one is about Miriam. And Larissa mentioned Miriam's cup before. You know, she's such a wonderful heroine and prophetess. And she also has challenging times in her life. And part of the reason that I love writing these songs that I call Girls in Trouble is that I like to look at moments of challenge for these women in the Torah, because I find that their strength comes out sometimes even more in these moments. And also because, you know, the nature of life is that we have up and points of down, right? It's cyclical. That's what it means to be alive. And so Miriam has these triumphant moments, which are wonderful to celebrate. And I felt like there wasn't quite enough attention being paid to this challenging moment in her life. And I wanted to basically keep her company in this moment, which is after the song at the sea, after the Exodus, when she's stricken with leprosy by God and sent out alone in the desert for a week. And the good news is that the people wait for her. So in a way, it is this beautiful story of kind of loyalty to Miriam from the community. But the challenging part is that she and her brother Aaron have been maybe challenging Moses a little bit to God, and that's why she gets stricken with leprosy. And the obvious question in this story, which even the rabbis ask, is why wasn't Aaron also stricken with leprosy? So there's various answers for that they come up with. But essentially, there's something that really kind of is challenging about this story. And the other thing is that God, even Moses is sort of arguing for Miriam to be healed, arguing, you know, pleading with God to heal Miriam and to let her come back. And God has this line in the Torah that's so troubling. And it says, if her father spit in her face, wouldn't she have to bear her shame for 7 days? And I don't write these songs to like dwell on the negativity or, you know, even kind of call out the issues. But like I said, I really just want to keep Miriam company in this moment and kind of connect her experience of being sort of unseen or not fully respected to the fact that that still happens in life. And so I wanted to kind of have her keep us company, have us keep her company. And so in that spirit, I wrote this song about that week in the desert in her voice, and it's called Snow, Scorpions, and Spiders. Well, my mother named me Bitter, although as a child I was so kind, hiding myself in the reeds to watch over my brother. But still my name was Bitter, bitter the taste of the sea, bitter the cries of the horses drowning behind us. If anybody had asked me, I might not have chosen to go. But everyone knows sometimes you don't have a choice. So when he said you're banished 7 days in the desert alone, I just started walking. I knew there was nothing to say. The scorpions and the spiders crawled up to me and stopped in my shade. Together in silence we watched as the sun crossed the sky. If anybody had asked me, I might not have chosen to go. But everyone knows sometimes you don't have a choice. if your God should turn from you, wouldn't you turn to? Still, I don't regret a minute, and I don't regret an hour of the week that I lived all alone at the top of the mountain. Though no voice came down from heaven, and I never saw words written in fire, I did see the birds of prey pick all the carcasses clean. If anybody had asked me, I might not have chosen to go. But everyone knows sometimes you don't have a choice. And if your father spit in your face, wouldn't you want to see? Wouldn't you want to leave that place? And if your skin should turn to snow, wouldn't you have to go? And if your God should turn from you, wouldn't you turn to? So that's me keeping Miriam a bit of company out in the desert, which, you know, we're sort of in the desert ourselves in a lot of ways, in terms of being in this sort of uncertain period where we're in a transformation as a society, we're sort of wandering, you know, we're waiting for this extended period of time, but also because in terms of the Jewish year, we're between Passover and Shavuot. So we are during the Omer, or during, you know, the counting of the Omer, and during that time between the liberation from Egypt and the receiving of the Torah. So it's always really special to play that song at this moment. Feel free to ask me any questions in the chat field or comments or anything like that if you'd like. And I'm gonna play a song about a character who I really love, who happens to share my Hebrew name, which is Hannah. Her name's Hannah in English. This song is called Marble Floor. And Hannah is someone who really wants to have a child, is having trouble doing so, goes to the goes to the temple, and she's praying so hard that she looks kind of wild, right, from the outside. Her lips are moving and no sound is coming out, and she's really carried away. And the high priest comes in and says, "You're drunk, you're not allowed to be drunk in here, get out, woman." And, you know, you might have thought the story would end there because this is the most powerful person in the society that's, you know, just a woman, a kind of alone, asking for something. But what happens in the story is that Hannah comes back and basically schools him and says, I wasn't drunk, I was actually praying. And he, the high priest, apologizes and says, you're in the right and your prayer will be answered. And she becomes the mother of the prophet Samuel. And I love that for so many reasons, but especially that it kind of, to me, it's about the courage to name what you need and want, which is what Hannah's really doing there. It's about the courage to kind of speak up if you're misjudged. It's about the possibility when we are in power of considering that we might not be right every minute. And then finally, she becomes the model for the Amidah, which is one of the most important prayers, right? That later in the Talmud, the rabbis base the way that we say that prayer on Hannah's actions. So we say it so that your lips are moving, but no sound is coming out because her prayer was such a model. So this is my song in Hannah's voice, and it's called Marble Floor. I open up my mouth, but no words came, and I lay down to sleep, but I did not dream. I looked up to the stars, but the sky was dark, like a mirror held up to my heart. but you lose yourself and everybody else. Oh, 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 oh. So I got down on my knees on the marble floor and I cried until my throat was sore. Oh, oh, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Tell me what you want from me. I'll do it all, I swear. I was not drunk, I was awake. I could not open, so I had to break to let the light come in. Oh, oh. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Take this alphabet from me. It's heavy on my tongue. All right. I'm going to read just a couple poems before we get back to the music. And I've been writing these. So I've been doing poetry and music and Jewish studies and teaching all kind of parallel, intertwining for the last 20 years. And there's a lot of Jewish themes in my 2 books that I published. And I might end up reading something from one of those books, but I've also been writing these brand new poems that are sort of reflecting on this moment. And so I wanted to share a couple with you while we're in this moment together. So this one is called On Breathing. I'm okay during the day, but at night I get scared, which makes it hard to breathe, which is a symptom of the pandemic, which is what scares me. Well played, anxiety, my old friend. You've always warned me something like this might happen. You're a gift from my ancestors who survived plagues and worse. They wove you into my DNA to warn me so that I too might survive. Now that it's happening, anxiety, I don't need you anymore. I need the ones who gave you to me. Hear me, ancestors who lived through danger times. I'm ready for you now. All these years I've carried your worries in my bones. Now I need your love, your 1,000-year view. Tell me it's going to be okay. Remind me you made it through, and we will too. Teach me to breathe. And this one actually refers to that first song. I've occasionally been doing sessions with Rabbi Amichai Lau-Levi, who's based in New York, and he has a great community called Lab Shul. He's been doing these virtual prayer and meditation and study sessions. And he did a session on this amazing kind of mystical amulet against the plague from a few hundred years ago. And it referred to Serach Bat Asher, who was the character in that very first song that I sang, that's sort of the Elijah-like mystical character. And in her story, one of the midrashim, one of the commentaries, is that she kind of magically, through the power of song, was able to tell Jacob, who was very old and had believed that his son Joseph was dead for a long time, but actually Joseph was just in Egypt. So Serach was able to convey the information that Joseph was still alive to Jacob without giving him a heart attack, because she put it in a song. So it's this beautiful midrash about the power of song and about this young woman sort of saving the day. And so that story, as well as this amulet that Rabbi Amichai found and was teaching about, are both in this poem. And it's also about Zoom. So here we all are. This is called Things I've Heard and Said This Week. Please mute yourself and listen. Please unmute yourself and speak. Let's take a moment to breathe. Let's take turns saying our names. Would you like to hold up your volcano? Would you like to draw an elephant? I'm so sorry. I thought it was yesterday. I'm so sorry. I thought it was tomorrow. How are we doing? Are we okay? Everybody doing okay? Here is an amulet to print and hang above your door. Here, an old story about a young woman who saved her grandfather by singing. Here is my living room, my bedroom, my porch, my basement, my kitchen. Here are the windows across the street and the faces behind those windows. When we venture out, we give each other a wide berth like ships in rocky waters. Humbled by the sea, we wave to each other through windows and screens. We sing and raise a glass, simultaneous but not together. Oh, my friends, my beloved strangers, I never knew our closeness until it was gone. And I've been posting these, I'll just type into the chat field if you want to read more. I've been posting them on social media, and also some of them I've gotten it together to put up on my website at that link. Okay, violin time. Just reiterating that I'm happy to take any questions in the chat fields, but if you just want to like chill and listen, that is totally great too. This is a song without words that I wrote for the character of Judith, who saves her people by sneaking up on the enemy General Holofernes, who is laying siege to her city, and the children of the city are beginning to starve. Everything's getting very dire, and she wins the war by doing this, which is why I call this Waltz for a Beheading. And it's I imagine it as a kind of soundtrack for Judith's actions in the tent. That's for Judith. And this next song is for Lilith. And if I could see you, I would say any Lilith fans out there, but you know, we can feel each other. So feel free to like do a little dance if you're a Lilith fan. And just very briefly, if you have not heard of Lilith, she is not really in the Torah. She's kind of this apocryphal creature. Scholars think maybe she was like a storm demoness in the Sumerian culture that worked her way into the Israelite imagination because she was so powerful. And so basically in Genesis, there's two different creation stories. And in one, man and woman are created as one and then split. And in the second, Eve is taken out of Adam's rib or side, right? And so there's so many ways to look at this, but there's one particular commentary is that actually they were two different stories that happen in chronological order. And that first woman was not Eve, it was actually Lilith. But because she was made as part of a whole, she got it in her mind that she's equal to Adam. And she started to kind of assert her rights. And Adam was horrified and went to God, and God was horrified. And so God said, yes, she's banished. So off goes Lilith into the kind of, you know, howling wilds of the night. And then God creates Eve out of Adam's side so that she'll know she's subservient, right? So Lilith got this really terrible rap for thousands of years, and people were very afraid of her and thought that all these terrible things that happened were because of Lilith. And there were many, speaking of amulets, many amulets against her, things like that. And then in the 1970s, she gets reclaimed by the feminists, and she gets a Jewish magazine, a great Jewish feminist magazine, Lilith. She gets a music festival, Lilith Fair. And I definitely wanted to write her a song from this positive perspective. And, you know, I was thinking that this idea of an equal partnership is really of whatever gender, but that's kind of what most of us are looking for these days. Or, you know, it kind of holds up as an ideal. And so I thought maybe it's not that the story was so radical or that Lilith was so radical, but just that she was like around 3,000 years ahead of her time. But maybe it was a love story that kind of happened at the wrong time. And in the Talmud, when those creatures are described who are created as two and then split, right, the Adam and Lilith, they take a word from Greek, the rabbis, and they call it androgynous, right? And so I called this love song from Lilith, "We Are Androgynous." Double-faced beings, one looking forward and one looking back, formed in the light of the throne in the sky. We are never alone, and we never die. Until we are ready to walk away. We are, 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 we are. We are, we are. All right. I want to read a couple more poems and then I'll close with a couple songs. I do want to read this poem from my book, Divinity School, because it's also about that time wandering in the desert. And thanks to those who are commenting. I appreciate your kind comments. So this poem is called How to Tell Time, and it's from a series of how-to poems throughout the book that are kind of structured on the Mishnah, the Jewish kind of instructional literature. And this is only 11 words. I'll show you. It's very, very short. So it's based on the tradition that manna fell in the desert, but it would rot if they tried to gather more than just for that day. They could gather for Shabbat if it was Friday, but otherwise just enough for that day, and any extra would rot. So I took this as a little bit of a Buddhist lesson. How to tell time. Now, like manna, is perfectly sufficient and will rot if stored. And I'm going to read one more from this book, which is called How to Graduate. I've been thinking of all the graduates right now. So it's a little bit of a cheeky poem about how what we need to know is actually inside us. And this one kind of draws on the tradition that the Torah is a love letter from God to the Jewish people. And also, I don't know if anyone out there wrote with lemon juice and then held a candle under it to make it like invisible ink made visible as a kid, which I'm realizing I should do with my kids in homeschool. Actually, that would be fun. But so this kind of refers to that. How to graduate. God wrote me a letter in invisible ink, but I got overwhelmed. The parchment, the lemon juice, the light, and the candle. I accidentally set it on fire. For 40 days and nights, the smell of caramel surrounded me, and when it receded, I sent out my only dove. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to figure out the amount of time. Let's see. I think what I'll do is I'm going to close with a song called, oh, no, I was messing. Oh, no, good. I was like, why do I not have any time? And it's because my math was off. So I am not going to close. I'm going to continue with a song about Sarah. And so we talk about the Akedah, the near sacrifice of Isaac, and we often talk about Abraham's experience and Isaac's experience, but not as often do we talk about Sarah's experience. And as you may know, she's not really discussed in that story, right? It's just Abraham takes Isaac up the mountain, but the next thing that happens in Torah is that she dies, and the rabbis connect this, and they have some crazy ideas about how exactly that happened. And one of them is that Satan, basically Satan, who's a little more of a trickster figure in the Talmud, showed Sarah what was happening up on the mountain, kind of like simulcast style, but cut it off before the rescue of Isaac so that she didn't know that. So this is the only other really sad one I'm going to play today. It's a really dark moment for Sarah. It's, a dark imagination of the story, but yet it is our story, right? It's a story that we've inherited. And I continue to feel that it's better to have stories that kind of acknowledge the profound challenges sometimes and unfairness of being alive than stories that paint some perfect world that then we feel bad about our lives. So I think that the trials that our ancestors kind of go through in these stories are in some ways there to contextualize our own problems, which are hopefully smaller, but as essentially human, right? And so I thought, okay, but we do have this very dramatic story of Sarah. It's really mythic. It's huge. And what art form, what song genre could really match that if I was going to have the chutzpah to try to put it into songs? And I decided that a Southern kind of gothic bluegrass murder ballad would be the appropriate genre. So here is my bluegrass murder ballad about Sarah, and it's called River So Wide. Well, I went down to river so wide. Satan was standing on the other side. He said to me, look and see. I saw you with our only child, with a knife in your hand and your eyes so wild, on the mountaintop. And then the vision stopped. My love, what have you done? And where have you taken my only son? Some terrible place where I can't see his face. All these years I've been a faithful wife, and I gave you a child so late in my life. My time was done when I bore you a son. So take me home and put me to bed, 'cause the sun is in the sky, but it's dark inside my head. And I don't care if I never do wake up, if I can't be with the one I love. Well, I went down to the river so wide. Satan was standing on the other side. He said to me, look and see. But hush, little baby, don't you cry, 'cause I'll be waiting on the other side. You won't be alone, I'll make it feel like home. All right, that one's for Sarah. I've recently been watching Game of Thrones and very late to the party on that, and it's been really interesting to think about Torah stories in context of that version of like a neo-ancient epic, and just think about like there's this element of like whatever happens in real life is just magnified like 1,000-fold, and at the end you're like, I'm kind of glad that's not my life. So I think that's one strand of, there's many strands of how we relate to our cultural epics, whether they be old or new, and that's one of them. But I want to play a love song now, and this is in the voice of Ruth, who we celebrate on Shavuot, which we're sliding in towards. So Ruth is famous for being like one of the great converts to Judaism, right? One of the people who join our tribe, and this is, there's a lot written about her relationship with her mother-in-law, Naomi, but she does also marry this man, Boaz, and they have children, and that creates, the future of the Jewish people, because eventually that leads to the line of King David and the line of the Messiah according to tradition. And I loved that image of just combining traditions and making something stronger out of that combination, right? And so I wrote this love song in her voice, and it's called Separate Histories. Sometimes the road chooses you and not the other way around. I don't know how, but I just knew you would lead me to sacred ground. I was living in a place, it was time for me to leave. I had lost all of my faith, but I was ready to believe. And in the middle of the night, I went and laid down by your feet. I knew that if the time was right, you would welcome me. I crept away before the break of day. By then I knew that you'd come back to me. And all the people at the gate and all the elders, they will say, we are the witnesses today to this covenant you made. Generations pass, generations come, and now our separate histories are one. Okay, and I'm gonna close with one last song. If you're interested in learning more about the stories behind the songs, the original Torah stories or rabbinic interpretations, or what I was thinking with my song, there's a study guide for each song that's downloadable at girlsintroublemusic.com. So this last song is another love song. Can never have too many. And it's got a chorus that if you want to sing along, you're in a very safe space because no one can hear you. So I'll just teach it really quick. So the chorus goes, more than rubies, more than pearls, the one I love. And that's going to happen at the end of each verse. So you can really rock it. This is based on Eshet Chayil, which is the woman of valor, a poem from the book of Proverbs. Like a merchant ship, strong and wide, gold and oranges deep inside, more than rubies, more than pearls, the one I love. With purple silk and tapestry, she weaves a blanket cover me. More than rubies, more than pearls, the one I love. The world is woven through us, and I cannot forget how her fingers hold the thread. She buys a field, she plants a vine. Come the autumn, she makes her wine. More than rubies, more than pearls, the one I love. Let it rain, oh let it storm. She keeps her babies safe and warm. More than rubies, more than pearls, the one I love. The world is woven through us, and I cannot forget how her fingers hold the thread. Grace can lie and beauty's vain. Oh, but she calls me by my name. More than rubies, more than pearls, the one I love. The world is woven through us. I swear I won't forget how her fingers hold the thread. Thank you all for being here with me. Thank you so much to Larissa for organizing this, and to Nishmah and your beautiful community for having me. And I'm just so glad to be connected to you all.
Alicia, thank you so much for sharing your music and your poetry with us. I know my soul is nourished, and I hope everyone else's is as well. I'm going to wrap us up in just a couple of minutes with some thank yous, but first I would like to hand things over to Rabbi Brad Horowitz, Director of Jewish Engagement and Adult Programs at the J, just to say a few words. And I am going to
I'm here. I'm here. Great. Hi. Thank you, Larissa. Alicia, that was really, really wonderful. And I haven't really, seen your work very much. And so it was such a treat for me personally just to see you and learn so much from you. And it was just beautiful. Thank you. I know that like many of you here on this call and watching, I see your names, you're familiar, and you're such an important part of our community. And I just want to say that the J misses you all. And it's so nice to see people gathering together, even though we can't do so physically in the virtual universe. It's important. Ever since we've been closed, it's been important for us to stay connected to our community. And the J has been doing a lot of virtual programming. I have to say, Larissa and Nishmah has been sort of the role model for many of us in our community in terms of staying engaged. And I just want to say on behalf of the J and our staff and our board, how pleased and how proud we are of all that's happening. And I hope that we can stay connected through Nishmah and through all the programs of the J with our community as we kind of stay, have to, keep going as long as we need to go to keep our community safe. So I just want to say Mazel Tov on this wonderful program, and we look forward to seeing everybody in person at the J when it's safe to come back. Thanks again, everybody. Oh, and here's Mindy.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words, Rabbi Brad. So I just want to thank a few people before we close. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who came here tonight, our participants. We can't do anything without you. You are the ones who bring meaning to our work. So thank you so much for being a part of this with us this evening. Of course, I want to thank Alicia Jo Rabins again for such a wonderful performance. I always love to get to hear you, and I was so happy for this opportunity to get to work with you again. Thank you for now officially becoming part of the Nishmah community. I want to thank Nishmah's supporters who believe in us, who make it possible for us to do this work every day. Thank you again to the Center for Jewish Learning here in St. Louis for generously sponsoring this event. Thank you to Nishmah's board for everything that you did to help out with this event, especially in terms of outreach. I am so grateful to you all. And I want to thank a few members of the J staff, particularly our marketing and development departments for everything they did as part of tonight's program. Thank you to Amy Bornstein, Director of Literary Arts at the J, who provided some behind the scenes technical support this evening. Also, thank you to Debbie Bronstein, our Sharsheret Program Supervisor, and of course, Rabbi Brad Horwitz. So thank you all again for being part of this with us. Again, there will be a recording available so you can rewatch, to your heart's content. And please stay safe and healthy. Those of you who are our J community, we can't wait to see you back at the J. Thank you all again. Have a wonderful evening.